It's great to be here again. This is one of my favorite topics. I'd really like if we had the whole week to just talk about animal intelligence and caring, but we don't. So we'll go with our 30 minutes. Well, these two characters, we'll get back to them. So how many of you think that if you had to prove your intelligence to someone who didn't speak your language and doesn't share your culture, you could do it? Raise your hand if you think you could prove your intelligence. A few of you could, the brighter apes in the crowd. A few of them, but it would be challenging, right? Even for those of you who put your hand up, challenging. If we don't share culture and language, it's very, very tricky to prove our intelligence, even with other humans. So of course it's difficult for us to understand the intelligence of other species. We don't share their language, we don't share their culture in a big way. So let's go to these two. So if you knew nothing about the person on the right, for instance, and you were asked to guess, so which of these two is more intelligent? Okay, it wouldn't be easy, but probably if you weren't familiar with the guy on the right, whose name is synonymous with intelligence in our culture, if you weren't familiar with him, you'd probably go, okay, the guy on the right, few loose cogs. I think I'll go with the one on the left. Most likely, you would. So it's really cultural. It's cultural. It's about what our background is, what our history is, what our knowledge is. Okay, now I have an intelligence test for you. So the knife on the left, if you have to pair it up with what is most closely related to the knife, raise your hand if you would pair it up with the spatula. Be honest. Okay, so lots of hands going with the spatula. Majority of the hands just went with the spatula, in case you didn't see. Okay, how many of you would pair up the knife with the fruit? You are so unusual. You're an unusual crowd. Okay, so really it went about 3/4 of you would pair the knife with the spatula, and about, look, did I get that about right? It's such a total guess. But about 1/4 of you paired up the knife with the fruit, maybe a little more than that. JC, if he's in the crowd, he has it more exact. He's very good at those things. Okay, back to these two. So the girl on the left, she's from the Capelli tribe. In the Capelli tribe, they judge intelligence based, their whole world is based on function. So in the intelligence test, for anyone in her tribe who is considered intelligent, the knife would go with the fruit because it's based on function. That's how their culture works. The majority of people in Western culture would put the knife with the spatula. When the Capelli people were asked, what would a fool choose? A real fool. The Capelli people said, a fool? A fool would put the knife with the spatula. So it's very, very cultural. So we go from trying to figure out human intelligence to other species intelligence. What I think is really important to be clear about throughout this presentation, throughout our lives, is that intelligence isn't a measure of worth. It's really important to remember that. Unfortunately, a lot of our choices are based on the fact that we think, many humans think, that intelligence is a measure of worth, even though it's not. So we're going to move on to other species. It's challenging enough in humans, but let's move on to other species for now. I just had, a week and a half ago, a neighbor who was complaining to me about how stupid his dog is. And I said, oh, really? I thought your dog was really amazing. And he said, no, you know, he keeps walking in his own poo. And I said, well, here's what I think. If you didn't keep him on a 5-foot rope, he wouldn't be walking in his own poo. This is not his top pick. So, like, who's the more intelligent? The guy who says, my dog keeps walking in his own poo, but he keeps him tied in the poo, or the dog? So it's, I won't even go into that one more. Neighbors. So some of you, if you've been here before, you know I have certain animals who I favor a lot. The one on the lower right is a squid who I favor a lot. Not just because they're super intelligent. I just have a thing for them. They're great. Squid can figure out a maze faster than a dog, faster than a pig. There's a great story about squid that I've told before, and I'll tell it quickly in case you weren't here before, because it's too good to miss, about two squid who were in a laboratory with many, many tanks. So there were all these tanks that had different sea life in the tanks, and the two squid were in their tank. And the researchers would come into the locked lab in the morning, and they would find that the two squid were in their tank, but the other tanks were empty. And they were trying to figure it out. Well, how can this happen? The lab is locked. Who's stealing these? So after replacing these beings many, many times who are missing, they finally said, this is ridiculous. Let's put a camera up and let's see what goes on when we're not here. And when they came in, after they put the camera up, and they all sat around, you know, watching the film of what was going on during the night, and they're watching, and they can't believe their eyes. The squid leave their tank, travel along the drain boards that have water in them, go up to each tank and eat their fill. They eat, they eat, they eat. Now that's clever enough, but to go, hey, let's head back to the tank so they don't know it's us? Really? Brilliant. Other species are so much better at figuring out our world, our language, our culture than we are at figuring out theirs. I have the cow and the calf up there. If you Google this, you will find stories around the world of calves who find their babies when they're separated from them. They have no GPS. They have no one giving them directions. They have no map. They find their babies. There's a really great story from the UK. Mother cow was sold at auction to one farm, and the baby was sold at auction to a farm 35 miles away. The next morning, the guy who had the mother goes out, and the fence is busted. The gate is busted from the barn. Everything's busted, and the mom's gone. He calls the auctioneer. He says, the cow's gone. Let me know if you hear anything. So he does hear something. He gets a call, the auctioneer gets a call from the person who bought the baby, the calf. The mother was there nursing her baby. 35 miles away. She busted out of her barn. She busted out of that fence, found her way 35 miles in one night, busted into another fence and into another barn, and was nursing her baby peacefully. I couldn't do it. Even, you know, I mean, I love my dogs, but if they went missing, I'd be like, you know, I'd need a GPS on them for sure. Some of you know about these amazing elephants. Unfortunately, their life is about slavery and working for humans in the logging industry in Asia. At the end of the day, the chains come off and they get a few hours of just relaxing and being fed and being able to drink and be with each other. There was a problem in one area, though, that the elephants would go and raid farmers' fields. So they came up with the solution to put a bell on them, because then the farmers would hear when they were coming into the field and they'd go shoo them away. So it took the elephants less than a week, I think it was just a few days, before they realized it was the bell. That's the problem. That's why this farmer was coming out. That's why the farmer was hearing them. So they learned to take mud and cram mud up into the bell and go have their fill of food. They adapt to our world so beautifully. So, how many of you have ever heard people say chickens are stupid? Raise your hand if you've ever heard someone say that. So most of you in this room have heard that. It's a crazy myth. There are a lot of myths that go around. When someone says that to JC and I when we're tabling, they'll say, oh yeah, like this one woman said, yeah, you know, I'm practically a vegetarian, but, you know, I eat chicken. And I said, oh, how did you choose chickens? You know, of all the animals who you could eat, how did you choose chickens? She said, well, you know, chickens. And I said, I do know chickens. And then she said, well, you know, they're really stupid. And I said, oh, tell me about your experience of chickens. I have such a totally different experience with them. They're brave, and they're smart, and they're caring, and every study done on them shows that they have incredible intelligence and language. And I said, but tell me about your experience of chickens. And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, you know, the chickens who you know. And she said, well, I don't know any chickens. I said, oh, I figured, because then you would know that they're not stupid. And I said, do you want to hear about some of my chicken friends? She said, sure. You know, so I tell her a few stories about chickens, and she looked a little stunned, because the myth is very strong in our culture. And she walked away. She said, well, I guess I don't eat chicken. You know, so it was great that she was willing to hear it and willing to look at her own story about chickens. So if an alien came to Earth, and this alien spent a little time going around, we would have a heck of a time explaining logically how we treat other species. It would be really difficult. The alien might say, Earthling, I'm wondering why some birds are protected. Some birds are the birds that you trap in cages because you want them to be part of your family, and then some of them you kill and fry up. Could you explain that to me? How do you know the difference between the birds? And some animals you really consider to be part of your family. Other animals you think have no feelings and you do whatever you want to them. How would you logically explain this to someone from another planet if they came? It would be really, really difficult to do it in any logical way. So a lot of intelligence is who's giving the test. If a dog or an ant were giving us the intelligence test, they might say, oh, your friend just left here. Go follow your friend using your nose. Go for it. And we'd be like, I can't smell my friend. We couldn't do it. And they would think we were idiots. What do you mean you can't follow your friend? Just use your nose. Ants can do it. Dogs can do it. So who's giving the intelligence test? It really matters. If a sheep were giving us the intelligence test, they'd say, here's pictures of 50 sheep faces, and I want you to be able to recognize them, and I'm going to show them to you again in about 11 months, and I want you to recognize them again in the photos, sheep faces, because they can do this with human faces. I don't know about you, but I can't recognize 50 different sheep faces just seeing them in a picture and remember it 11 months later. I couldn't do it. But they can do it. They can do it with us. I don't even think I could, well, often I don't remember somebody who I met 2 weeks ago. I see them and I'm like, yeah, where do I know you from? So who's giving the intelligence test? It really matters. We also have this thing where we take animals out of their natural environment and we say, let's try and prove they're intelligent by bringing them into our world and having them do what we understand as humans. We have them do our things. So if a dolphin or a pig can play a computer game, we go, oh yeah, intelligent. They don't need to know how to play a computer game in their world, but we have a hard time just studying them in their world and seeing it as intelligence. For their world, for their culture. So this is pretty fun. I have a little film I want to show you.
In this challenge, a tasty peanut is placed at the bottom of a tube. It's too far for fingers to reach, and the tube is bolted securely to the bars.
They're just presented with a tube and a peanut, and they need to use their intelligence to figure the problem out.
To find out how humans approach the problem, we set up a similar experiment for the visitors at the zoo.
There you go, free sweets up for grabs. All you've got to do is get them out the tube.
We placed everything needed within reach. But not one human child or adult had a eureka moment. So what happened the first time this orangutan, Dakana, and her baby were given this challenge? In a moment of genius, Dakana takes water from her drinking fountain and uses it to float the peanut to within reach. One after another, almost every orangutan here was able to solve this problem by themselves.
Result, she gets the peanut. Nobody's ever shown orangutans how to do this. You know, if you raise the level of something using water, not even a solid tool, but a liquid tool, you can get your food reward. They figure this out by themselves.
So while we're on primates, see, animal intelligence, I forgot to put the mic up to my mouth. While we're on primates, not talking about this primate, one more film on primates.
They pitted young chimpanzees against grown-up human beings. Now, does that sound like a fair contest? We counted on Bill Blakemore to find out whether it was.
First test. Can chimpanzees count from 1 to 9 in the right order in return for a peanut or other tasty reward? Yes, they can. Now, if you just flash the 9 numerals for a moment, then cover them, can a chimpanzee remember where each numeral was and still get the order they were in right? Yes, for another tasty treat. This chimp got this wrong once, but only once. Now, if you flash just some of the 9 numerals, then cover them, can a chimp A, remember where each was, and B, in the right order, even though some were missing? Yes. Now, can another primate species, the adult Homo sapien, do the same? Well, okay. And again? 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 One more try? Well, okay. But actually, chimpanzees did much better than humans in this flash and remember test, leaving the Japanese human researchers scratching their heads. One possible theory, chimpanzees care more than humans about peanuts.
And lest you think they used just one very smart chimp, they actually had 6 chimps taking the test. And if you want to see more of this, you can go to abcnews.com.
Oh, so this is Woody. Woody is no longer with us. Woody passed away. Unfortunately, rats don't live very long. Rats are brilliant. And Woody was especially amazing. We're going to go from sort of intelligence to the ability to experience pleasure and caring and pleasure and all these other things that we assume that other species don't have. Many of us assume. Woody was amazing. He lived with my friend Kathy Woodworth, who's a pianist. And Woody lived in an open sort of an aquarium. He had free range of the whole house, and he was real tidy. You know, he had to use the bathroom. He had a little special spot he would go. And I went over to Kathy's one day, and she said, you know, have I ever shown you how Woody only likes Bach? And I said, what? She said, I can play all kinds of music, but Woody only likes Bach. And I said, well, I'd like to see that. She sat down, and she said, well, you know, he's in his little aquarium thing, hanging out. She said, but come on, sit with me on the piano bench. So she plays, and I don't remember what composer, some other composer. She goes, now I'm going to play Bach. She plays Bach, and you hear, and here comes Woody and sits on her shoulder and stares at the keys. Only for Bach. And then I said, yeah, but you know, that could be coincidence. I was a little skeptical. She said, well, watch this. I'm going to stop playing Bach. Watch how bored he gets. So she goes on to some other composer and she's playing, and Woody starts looking around, stops looking at the keys, and off he goes. She said, only Bach, every day. So is that aesthetic sense? I don't know. He's got his preferences, though. So here's another animal who we often don't think of as experiencing pleasure, play, just for fun. This isn't for survival. I don't know how many of you have heard of crowboarding, but here it is. Filmed by a family in Europe.
С горки катается. Она нас, наверное, это дразнит. Балует. Интересно, в какой стороне она сейчас едет? Ту. Нет. Она вообще не едется что-то вот. Здрава. Мы поедем, мы помчимся на крышечку на трамвае. Клювом.
Не может захватить.
Хоть это еще дальше.
Over and over. So that was just for fun. Just for fun. You know, I was camping on a river in New Mexico, and I watched these ducks. I was camping right by some rapids a few years ago, and the ducks were playing in the rapids, and then they'd fly back, and they'd play in the rapids again. They weren't getting food. They weren't doing anything else. They were a bunch of kids playing. You know, and we just kind of forget that other species love to play, they love pleasure, they love comfort. If we understood this, it would change the way we lived as humans. It would change the way we thought of them. We wouldn't think of them as food and entertainment and clothing. We would think, oh, living being who likes what I like. So this is our dog, Bean, and she has a cold, wet towel on her because it's been really hot in New Mexico. This is last week. So we have 4 rescue dogs in the house, and I gave them each their own towel, and I soaked it in ice water because it was so hot, and I put the towel on them and gave them a nice ice-cold wet towel massage, and they were rolling. They were like, yeah, do the belly, yeah, do the side. And then I was like, okay, enough. We spent 2 hours on this. I love you, but I got to work. So I hang the towels on the bathtub. And this dog, Bean, a little while later, I'm doing something and I feel this tap on my leg, and I turn around and she's got her towel in her mouth and looks at me, wags her tail like, how about one more? And so I did. I soaked the cloth. She dropped on her back. Do it. That's smart. She goes and grabs her own towel knowing she's going to get results. So when we're looking at caring, this is a really nice film about caring.
Malaysia's national hero isn't a Maradona-like figure scoring at will on the soccer pitch. It's a dog named China. Police think China may have heard the cries of a newborn baby boy abandoned by his 14-year-old mother after birth, and with 6 pups of her own, the canine's motherly instincts kicked in. China somehow managed to drag or carry the newborn over near her own pups, and when a neighbour of the human persuasion heard the baby's cries, they went to investigate. Now locals call him the miracle baby and China a hero.
She took it like a puppy and preserved it. The doctors told us if she hadn't done this, the baby would have died.
Despite a few cuts and bruises, doctors at the Melchor Romero Hospital say the baby boy is in good shape. As the national media descended on her little town to meet the canine hero, China preferred to stay behind the scenes.
That's pretty wonderful. But look at the 2 different species in this story. I really don't know another species who would put their baby in the trash, which is where this baby was found, in the trash. The dog saved the baby, took care of the baby. So these species, other species, often are saving humans. They're going beyond even caring about their own species. We have a hard time as humans sometimes caring about our own species, taking care of our young, taking care of our elderly, taking care of each other. And they're going beyond. This beluga whale, somebody caught this beluga whale who was saving a diver who had passed out. On the right is a dog who saved some kids from a rattlesnake. The same dog had had neighbors throwing stones at the dog. It was a stray dog. And this family felt bad for him and adopted him. 2 weeks later, he saved the woman's 2 children who had saved him from the rattlesnake. And this is Lulu the Pig, who a lot of people know about. Lulu saved a woman who had collapsed in her house and would have died if Lulu hadn't squeezed her body through the dog door, gone out to the highway, and acted like a crazy pig so somebody would finally stop, and followed her back. And the woman was saved by Lulu the Pig. Our species, we also know how to care. We do know how to care about each other, and we do know how to care about other species, either directly at rescues like this. This is at Woodstock. Either very directly or in the choices that we make. That caring of ours that says, I care about other species enough that I'm not going to wear them or use them as entertainment or eat them. I'm not going to imprison them. We care that much about other species, and it's growing. It's growing quickly. Our intelligence and our caring is letting us open our circle of compassion to other species. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here at Summerfest. We come here to be surrounded by other people who, of our species, are the ones who are saying, I care and I want to care more. And that's why I'm here. I think that's why we're all here. I love being surrounded by all of you. It's a very healing week for a lot of us. It's a really healing week for me to be around people who understand that we're part of one big animal family and we can care for that entire family. And I love that you're here, and I look forward to being with you all week. Thank you, everyone.